Lynn's looking a little pale. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Evil-Lyn. Modernizing and celebrating the original 80s Master Universe action figures, Master Universe Origins gives you the power to pose Eternia's greatest warriors as retro-style figures, or in the new action-packed battle positions. I have a feeling something wicked this way comes. Nonetheless, though, we're going to push forward, and before we get a closer look at the brand new Evil-Lyn with a slightly more lighter color scheme, we're obviously going to figure out how tall the figure stands. In order to do that, I'm going to take this tape measure that I'm holding in my hand currently. I'm going to put it right to the very top of her head, which is right around there. If I'm reading this correctly, then Evil-Lyn version 2, even though that's not what she's called, stands 6 inches. Well, 6.003. Can we all agree that that's just 6 inches? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for agreeing with me, at least the majority of you. The figure also in centimeters stands 15.2 centimeters tall. Similar to what we did with Merman, we're just going to move over Evil-Lyn, and for best comparisons, it would make some sense to bring in the more sickly, jaundiced-looking Evil-Lyn, who's got a slightly crooked... Actually, you know what? Let's just straighten out her feet here. Don't want her falling over on us. Yes, you can see, looking at the two, unlike the Merman that did have at least different armor, this appears to be the same, the very same Evil-Lyn from one to the other, just with a little bit of different coloring. And yes, of course, she's not as jaundiced. Let's bring in some of the other figures as well for some comparisons. We're bringing Trapjaw, bring in Skeletor, because again, he's the boss. He has to come in for all these reviews after all. And we can also bring in Merman. Speaking of Merman, I just brought in Merman V1 to give you guys an idea. Evil-Lyn, of course, though a different body than the male figures around her, still at least is a carbon copy to the one that we had gotten before, just in a brand new color scheme. That's all. Starting first with the samesies, Evil-Lyn comes included with the very same comic book that came included with both Faker and Merman, the LOP version. This one is entitled Sucker Punch. Fisto, I guess, doesn't have the wherewithal to know his surroundings. He clearly has no idea that this Faker He-Man is about to club him with this giant... Is that a limb from a tree? I would assume so, because the spikes that are on this part of it happens to be the same spikes that are on the neighboring trees. You see that? How I was able to put that all together just like that. Genius. No, really not. On the back, though, listed are the 6 characters that make up this wave. If you were to technically disclude He-Man and Skeletor, we're going to run with that. You only really get technically 4 figures. And then even to disclude, we're going to run with still that same awkward word that isn't even right. You really only get Fisto. He's like the brand new figure from the set. All the other ones are basically just, in some way, shape, or form, samesies from before. Let's have a look at the inside of the comic. Advertising, I believe that is the Land Shark, which at the point of this current review that we're filming, well, I'm filming right now, that you will be looking at later on, highly edited, with a whole bunch of sprinkled in there effects and an intro and an outro and all that fun stuff as well. But I have yet to pick up that Land Shark. I think Toys R Us here locally in Canada has it listed right now. Hoping if that's the case, at the time that you will be eventually watching this video, I hope this is currently in my possession. I don't even know. I'm just making more speculation than anything else. There's no dialogue on the inside. Fisto is slamming against this door. I'm sorry. If your name is Fisto, I would assume your ability is a really strong, big, giant arm, right? If you can't smash through a door, and I don't even know the circumstances around this because I can't even read. There's no dialogue or anything like this. Maybe this is a magic door. But apparently, if he's unable to knock down the door, the one very thing he's capable of doing, hey, we need to knock down stuff. Hey, where's Fisto? You can't count on this guy if he can't even smash down this one door. Again, I don't even know fully what's going on here. It could be some magic-laced door. Who knows? Apparently, this guy could open up the door fine. The Faker He-Man. Anyways. Good illustrated artwork, I will say. Snake Mountain looks like he's seen something that he doesn't know if he wants to share with everybody else. We've got a battle-damaged Faker, and we've got a whole army of what will be Fakers down the road. Man, am I ever disappointed again that didn't have the Origins head sculpt. Mattel. I'm going to put that to the side for the time being. And of course, we'll quickly skim through this. Nobody really cares about the sheet. Does anybody? I really don't. I throw it really in these reviews that we look at, simply just to point out that it comes included with it, and I just feel it's a waste of paper. It tells you only that you can remove the limbs indicated in gray, and yes, her head also is counted in that list, and you can swap these around with other figures. I don't think I've ever really tried it with a He-Man figure. I'm going to maybe give that a try in this review. Put that to the side, and she also comes included with one accessory, her little tiny magic ball scepter. I was just actually waiting for the camera to catch up to me. There it is right there. You can see the orb is being held inside what I'm guessing to be a talon. Talons, sharp talons. Only one of them, though. It is a darker color as well. The original one that came included with that first jaundice Evil-Lyn. I really should stop calling her jaundice Evil-Lyn, because that's really mean. The other one was blue. This one just happens to be purple. I think the one in purple looks a lot nicer, but for obvious reasons, the purple one wouldn't have gone well with Evil-Lyn, the one that we had gotten before. You can fit this into her hand, and actually, in this case, you can fit it in either one of her hands. You don't have to be so specific about one hand and just leave the other one out. He likes to be included in this as well. But you can hold it in either one of her hands. And yes, technically, too, you can also have her holding it in both hands. Just fit the one end on one side, and again, you can just fit the hand in like that. There you go. Go ahead and take this off and put this to then the side. And we'll get a closer look now at Evil-Lyn. Now again, unlike Merman, let's move her over and bring in the original. Ooh, that's hard on the eyes. She's almost pulsating a glowing yellow. Still that same color of almost a highlighter yellow. To be fair, though, this original Evil-Lyn is based more on the original toy that came out in the 80s, and that original toy was this yellowish color. This Evil-Lyn, however, is based more on the 2000 design of Evil-Lyn. And of course, you're getting a much more paler skin tone, which is closer to being more like a chalk white. And all the things that were various different shades of blue are now various different shades of purple. The arms are exactly the same. The torso is exactly the same. You're really not getting too much different, unlike what you got with the version 2 version of, I said version twice, of Merman. That Merman at least had different armor. Not really much is changing here for Evil-Lyn. I will say one good thing that benefits the newer Evil-Lyn is that you can make out her face a lot easier. Not only is the other one just so yellow, but it's harder to make out things like her nose, her eyes, and even her lips. You get a much better feel and vibe for it when you're certainly looking at the newer release version. Of course, one of the drawbacks of this Evil-Lyn is she doesn't really fit in well if you're collecting specifically the Retro Master Universe figures. Because, of course, this one fits in better, providing, of course, you overlook the fact that she's got so much yellow all over her skin, but at least this one is closer to being her retro counterpart. This Evil-Lyn, however, is being closer to that 2000s series. It looks a little bit more closer in proximity when you compare her with, say, this Merman, the version 2 that we looked at not too long ago. I would certainly be displaying the two together, and even when I did the review of this Merman, the LOP version Merman, Lord of Power, I completely forgot the fact that really this Evil-Lyn could be displayed well with this Merman. And so far up to this point, these are really the only two figures that you could display together. I mean, you really can do whatever you want when it comes to your own personal collection. But I think when it comes to my own personal collection, I'm probably going to be displaying these two figures together because they make a little bit more sense. While we're actually certainly on the topic of things, this one certainly does advertise the idea of removing limbs. I really wasn't even going to do this, but curiosity, I will say, got the better of me. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab myself Skeletor. I'm going to pull out his arm. I'm just curious to see if Evil-Lyn's arm does actually fit inside. And wouldn't you know it, it only just barely fits. Oh, that looks ridiculous. That looks so ridiculous. The peg system seems to be different. In fact, actually, when you're looking at Skeletor's peg joint, you can definitely see there's a difference between the two. Swappable. Not likely. Well, you can swap them, but you'd have to swap them with same-Z's bodies. Clearly, this is a case where these aren't same-Z's pegs, and these certainly aren't the same-Z's figures. So much for that dashed idea. I'm going to go ahead and pop this back into Skeletor's arms. Be sending Skeletor on his merry little way. Let's bring back Evil-Lyn and pop her arm back into place. Yeah, I do like the coloring on this one a little bit more, but similar to Merman. I feel because of the vintage figures, and I'm more attached to the idea that I'm liking this line because they're based on the original vintage line, and they just have, of course, all the additional articulation. I feel more inclined. I feel like I want to have more loyalty to the original Evil-Lyn, but clearly, like, this is the better of the two. Again, when you're looking at the face sculpt, for example, the paint, the eyeshadow, for example, is so much nicer on this head sculpt. Of course, when you look at the helmet there as well, you've got the additional purple that's added in there, slotted in only some of the places, kind of taking turns back and forth between the black and the purple there. Paint on it is pretty good. I don't really have any serious issues, at least. The skull, yes. I don't know, I'm assuming it's the black. Maybe it was the purple that was painted. It's just a little bit that's been left off, but it's definitely not a deal breaker. When we get into the articulation of the figure, this is actually one issue that I had with this Evil-Lyn, is she has really loose arms. And she also has really loose legs. Specifically, like the lower legs, really super loose on this figure. You almost have a bit of the dinner bell thing happening here. I can't really say it's mold degradation, but I mean, we already have this mold being with a Tila, 2 now Evil-Lyns, and a She-Ra. And we're, of course, going to be getting more of these figures, because we're going to be getting, I think, the greenish tinted Enchantress Sorceress Tila in a later release. So they're probably still going to make use of this mold, but I mean, already out of the packaging, what little time I've actually had with the figure, she is loose. Not loose everywhere, but she's loose in some of the areas, like her arms and her elbows. I really wish that wasn't the case. Seeing as we're already talking about the articulation, let's have a look at the articulation on the brand new Evil-Lyn. Her head rotates all the way around, but similar to the original one, the sides of her collar, of course, are going to be a bit of a problem when it comes to rotating her head, simply just because, yeah, she's going to be rubbing up against that either side. The head does hinge up, only a little bit, and the head hinges down, only a little, back and forth there as well. The arms hinge out, even the loose ones, sadly, at a 90-degree angle bend. You can also bring the arms all the way around, like that. She does have a bend in the elbow, and you can rotate it back and forth with articulation as well, also in her hand, back and forth this way as well. One thing I didn't actually mention, a little bit of additional paint problems, just a little bit on the band on the arm. This, of course, would just be a case where not every figure, I'm sure, is going to have this issue. If you picking up this Evil-Lyn, for example, you may not have any issues with the band. You know, actually, one last thing I really could talk about, just before we wrap up the rest of the articulation on the figure. I know we're kind of abruptly cutting this short, but I did notice actually that the plastic on the legs and the plastic on the arms are a different shade than the torso. It's almost as if one was painted and the others are not. But then trying to hone in on what exactly was painted, I can't imagine that they would have painted the legs. I can't imagine that they would have painted this. Maybe it was a case that they painted in the torso, but if you're looking at the sculpting on the side, there's clearly unfinished portions that reveal the plastic that they used. I don't really know why the arms and the legs are a different color than the rest of the torso. It's only very subtle, the difference between the two. Where were we? All right. Articulation on the waist, you can rotate it all the way around. Her legs split out just a little bit, not a full Van Damme splits, but you can also move it back and forth like this. Bend at the knee, you can rotate the lower leg, you can rotate the boot, and you also have articulation in the lower feet, back and forth this way, and you can also ankle pivot them as well. Evil-Lyn, in a case like this, I sort of share the same feelings that I had for the version 2 of Merman. Again, we'll bring in the original Evil-Lyn. If you're collecting this line, and I guess if you were collecting it right from day one, you've adjusted yourself to the idea that these lines are based on the original retro line that came out in the 80s. The figures aren't that much different, just an improved head sculpt in many of the cases and brand new articulation that those original figures never possessed. But if you were collecting that line from before, you may gravitate still more to the jaundiced-looking Evil-Lyn, just because she's closer to resembling that original retro Evil-Lyn. I will say, though, similar to my feelings when it came to version 2, LOP Merman, I think that the brand new Evil-Lyn from the later Masters line is definitely a much better-looking figure. It's easier on the eyes, and she has a whole lot less yellow on her skin. I suppose I really need to get away from that locked-in mindset of what this line has to be. Of course, when Master Universe Origins first started, these were all figures a throwback to the original 80s line, but with better improved upon articulation and brand new head sculpts. It doesn't have to mean necessarily that Mattel has to stick to that mindset and not periodically think outside the box. And that's essentially what we're getting here with a second double dipping of Evil-Lyn and Merman. Merman has more of the changes than what Evil-Lyn has. Evil-Lyn is just basically a repaint deco. The original Jaundice, I really shouldn't start calling her Jaundice Evil-Lyn. But of course, in a case like this figure is exactly the same as the original Evil-Lyn. Purists would probably still stick with the original Evil-Lyn simply just because it looks more like the retro line Evil-Lyn. But again, I like the idea that at least we're getting two. If we had just gotten, say, this version of Evil-Lyn and done away with the yellow-skinned Evil-Lyn, it maybe would stand out a little bit more, and people would probably be saying, well, if the line is supposed to be this, then why are we getting this look for Evil-Lyn? At least Mattel, and I guess, for obvious reasons, they're getting the most out of their molds as they can. They're at least giving us two different looks to the character, two different looks to the look of Merman as well. I hope this line still continues and branches off so that just as much dedication, and I mentioned this in the review of the Merman, that just as much time and dedication goes into expanding the line and expanding the lore and giving us the way these characters look outside the realm of the Filmation line. But I still hope that there's going to be attention made to the retro line, which I feel, again, what Master Universe Origins started out being. It doesn't have to mean it necessarily stays on that same course, but still make sure that there's still as much attention and care given to the way that they looked in the retro line as they will to what we probably will see as an expanded split of this line with characters such as Evil-Lyn and characters like Merman. What do you guys think of Evil-Lyn? I mean, clearly for me, if I'm looking at this as just a figure, this one has better looking paint. It definitely looks a lot healthier, even though she probably needs to get a little bit of sun. If I'm looking at this line as being improved upon retro figures, then the other Evil-Lyn with the yellow jaundice skin will be a better looking fit for the collection I really want to have on display. But let me know down below in the comments section, which of the two Evil-Lyns do you prefer? And I guess it really depends on how you would want to be collecting this line. If you really don't even care, and you just want different characters of all the different incarnations of He-Man, then yeah, you're probably going to be open to the idea of collecting various different looks of Evil-Lyn. Well, you're probably not going to be getting any more of Evil-Lyn looking like this in this mold. But let me know down below in the comments section which of the two that you actually do prefer. And also, while you're here anyways, after all, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. And that, yes, you're keeping your peepers peeled to this channel because there will be more Masters of the Universe Origins figures coming your way in the not-so-distant future. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.